Hello, this is Workbench episode 18. I'm Seth Werkheiser, along with Bill Meese, two people who work in music and love technology, sharing our nerdy knowledge to help make your work easier and more manageable. Hello, Bill.
Hello, Seth W.
How are you this evening?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Excellent.
I'm very excited about our show notes today.
Yes, this one's near and dear to us.
And me specifically, for sure.
And me exactly for certain. Without the topic that we are talking about tonight, I would have no food in my belly.
Wow, that's really deep.
It is. Ponder that, won't you?
But yeah, man. How was your week or weekend? Now that we record on Mondays.
The weekend was good. Relaxing, chill. Nice. In the last week, I've become a morning person.
Yeah, you've been alluding to that on texting, and tell me about that, because that's another thing that's pretty near and dear to me.
Well, a wee bit ago, I had to do some traveling, and a handful of the traveling was in the early morning, and that's something that I'm not, as a remote worker, not something I have to deal with too much. But I had to do it 2 days in a row. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get up early. Going to get to it. And I just kept getting up early. I love it. I'm up super duper early. Get a whole bunch of stuff knocked off of my to-do list. And by noon, I'm like, okay, what's next?
You know, there's a lot of articles out there that tout successful CEOs having success due to the fact that they get up early.
Wow.
Now, I'm sure there's more to the story than that.
Sure.
Such as school experience, time and dedication and hard work.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm sure getting up early has something to do with it.
Love it.
But yeah, I'm a morning person, and anyone who hasn't tried to become a morning person, you're missing out, because I always like the fact that I have a list of things that I've accomplished longer than before 9 a.m. than most people have all day long.
Yes. And man, the world is different before 9 a.m.
It really is.
When you already have 2 or 3 hours worth of work before 9 a.m., it's like the Matrix, man. It
is. So what time did you get up, Mr. Early Riser?
Well, since I'm the one without children and such, I'm an up at 7 a.m. kind of guy now.
So that's your getting up early?
Yes. Yes, I know. I'm sorry, all those parents out there that are up at 5:30 a.m.
You know what's interesting about that is that your getting up early is my sleeping in. No, I was always an early riser because of different reasons, work, whatever,
sure.
Back in the day, but I've been getting up. I've been sleeping in lately, which is 6 for me. But if I really need to get something done, I'll get up at 5. Wow. And usually the house doesn't start to rumble until about 6:30. So it gives me a solid 90 minutes if on a good day.
Yeah. To
get some things done, and it's awesome between. Getting a few crucial tasks done, some freelance work, reading the paper, getting the coffee ready.
Yep.
Even if it's 45 minutes, it's enough for me to set my day on the course that it needs to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you get a few things marked off your to-do list by 9 a.m., man. And the rest of the day is just, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and for those that have listened to past episodes, that hour of the morning is where the email tools and email apps that allow you to schedule emails come in handy big time.
Yeah,
because the last thing you want is, or maybe you do, is showing people that you're answering emails at 5:12 a.m. So no, but seriously though, what I do a lot of the time is if I'm answering emails that early, which is not recommended. You should be meditating or breathing. But if you do check email, or when I do, I always schedule the emails to send after 9.
Sure.
To not set any false boundaries between me and people whom I work with.
Expectations, absolutely,
right.
man.
But I think we've done 2 or 3 episodes with that topic in mind. But anyway,
that's just how important it is.
Yeah.
I hope that's getting through to people.
There's one thing on my notes that I want to just get off my chest.
Do it, man.
That I didn't get to do last week.
Ooh.
And it's important, and it's kind of a standalone point, but it's one that will always be true.
Let's address it.
The importance of breaking down a task or a project even into little digestible bites. I cannot stress how important that is, and has been for me even over the last couple of weeks.
Wow.
Whether it's taking out the garbage or, planning a wedding.
Sure.
Both tasks are compiled of smaller, bite-sized chunks. And I know those are 2 very extreme examples, but as far as getting things done and working better and smarter, that concept rings true no matter what you're working on. And I'm always going to default back to David Allen's Getting Things Done, but he always refers to the to-do list and how a lot of people's to-do list, just says mom or yard work, where it's not nearly as broad stroke as that. It's always call mom or buy mom birthday present, like that. Those are the next actions that should be on your to-do list. Or yard work should be buy gas for the lawnmower today, and then tomorrow fill lawnmower with gas. Those are the specific next action tasks that actually go on your to-do list, that enable you to actually complete your projects sometime within this decade.
Sure.
So I just want to get that rant off my chest. So thank you.
Hey, I tell you, as a writer, with putting out my nightly email newsletter, I find it super helpful if the night before, even if I just spend 15 minutes the night before, like, okay, let me just get some of the factual stuff. Let me, what year did this album come out? What album number is it? What, is it the first or the second, or is it the last on a label? Okay, let me, just that kind of like informational stuff. Even just doing that like the night before or early in the morning, whatever. Just as long as I'm not sitting down and trying to attack, okay, write the entire email newsletter now, go. Like,
right.
The digestible chunk thing is huge, absolutely.
Big time. And even with my freelance stuff, with transcribing interviews.
Oh.
If someone has an hour-long interview they want me to do, I'm not sitting down and doing that in one sitting.
No.
The rule of thumb is I usually chop it up into 10 or 15-minute blocks and do it over the course of a couple days.
Because sitting down and trying to transcribe an hour, that's just not fun.
No.
I mean, 10 minutes isn't a grand old time either, but hey, it's only 10 minutes. 10 minutes, you spread that out.
Right. None of it's fun, trust me.
Sure, I believe you.
But anyway, that's what I wanted to address, because I cannot stress how important of a concept that is in my daily workflow.
No, I get it, man. Totally.
So, I guess that's that. What are we talking about for this episode?
We're talking about what? Did you say something? No, you did not.
Nope.
Sorry, a little Skype action there. We're talking about remote working, and in our notes leading up to this, I did want to stress that this isn't just solely about working for somebody in an office setting, so if you don't do any of that, I don't have to listen to this episode. It's not about that.
It's definitely more of an idea conversation than like a specific situational thing.
Yes, it's one thing to, go into the corner office if you work a 9 to 5 and say, I want to work remotely 3 days a week. Sure, there's plenty of books and podcasts and everything else about that. It's not exactly what this episode's about.
Then what's this episode about?
This episode is about doing stuff that back in the day you had to meet in person to do, whether it was a job where you went into an office and you punched a time clock and you did something, or, bands used to have to meet in a practice room to make music together.
I see. I see where you're going with this.
Interviews used to have to be done in person. Podcasts, would have to be done in person kind of stuff.
Right.
But the remote thing makes it possible now. It removes the barrier of distance.
Well, I don't have any experience with it, but you've had some experience with the remote interviews, right? I mean, you don't have to name names, but you've gone through it, I know.
You mean remote interviews in terms of, as a writer talking to someone?
Or just anything, whether it's a job interview or a actual
one of the grisliest things I had to do, I was in Seattle a couple of years ago when doing Noise Creep, and we had a band visiting the AOL Music office in New York City at, I forget what hour. I think it was a 10 a.m. interview or something like that, which I know bands love doing, 10 a.m. interviews, stopping by the office. But, it was 7 a.m. out in Seattle, but I was up and, coordinating with the person at the New York City office, coordinating with the photographer, a couple texts, a couple emails, hey, make sure, and, yeah, went fine. Big remote setup like that. I loved it. I didn't have to be in the office.
Right. Well, there's a ton of different tools that we can dive into that allow teams to work remotely, whether it's within a company or a band or a collective or a family even. If you're planning a family trip or a garage sale, you could use a lot of the same tools as Fortune 500 companies use to, plan out their projects. But what kind of situations? I mean, let me back up. What are some important concepts to grasp and understand in order to, even attempt to work remotely?
I think removing the bottleneck. I think whenever you have, if you ever have someone who has a piece of information or a vital part of something, and they have it on their hard drive or they have to email, the more of that information you could get out of a bottleneck situation, I think is huge. If you can have that information, oh, what's the code for such and such for us to do this thing? Oh, wait, that code is in a Google Doc over here. We don't have to wait for John over here in Seattle who's still sleeping because of the time zones. It's right here. So that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're touching on probably the epicenter of remote work is the transparency of information. In that, when you're working with a team, regardless of what you're doing, each member of the team will have a crucial piece of info that will make the overall picture complete or work or function.
Sure.
And in the past, and in the past meaning over the past 5-10 years, even 15 years, we've relied on email and solely email to a large degree as the method to distribute and share those bits of info. Now, not the case whatsoever.
Totally.
Now I would even say, sorry to interrupt, but
no, go run with it.
Now I'd even say that email would be an extra step that you have to almost go outside of your workflow to do in order to share that info, versus just using a shareable, collaborative platform that lends itself to that, to the ease of doing that on its own.
Totally. I mean, part of it is, I mean, you and I work together on this podcast, but everything that we do is placed in Trello.
And Dropbox.
And Dropbox, yeah. We have run into this in the past where I had to email you that one time of like, hey, where's our logo? And eventually we, link that up and put it now in Trello. Great. There it is all the time. I never have to email you again and say, hey, where's that file? Like that sort of thing.
Right, and and we're a small team. It's 2 people.
That's true, yes.
And I would even argue that our team is a horrible example of of how it can work, to its maximum capacity. And
absolutely.
If you have a team of 50 people, where
Yes.
you have 50 people, doing 8 to 10 hour work days with information flowing in and out all day long, that's where the crucial, sweet spot is for team collaboration and remote working, is that those people are pushing stuff in and out all day long. And, if you're working on a platform that works for you, whatever it may be, in real time, that's where remote work really starts to work, because you're all looking at as much of the same pot of soup at the same time, with all the different ingredients involved at the same time, all together, in making it, the best final product it can be, rather than sitting at your desk, staring at your inbox, hitting refresh,
right,
waiting for that next bit of info to come in.
Right, absolutely. And I've heard some people, some friends of mine that work in different environments, where they're looking at their phone waiting for a text to come in. Ugh. Like for what the next directive is, or where's this thing, or this and that. Like in a workplace, that's not computer centric. If all of that is just in a Google Doc,
or anywhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if it's anywhere. Yeah, someplace where it could be updated and looked at by many people in many different locations. And again, remote work doesn't have to mean, oh, I'm in New York City and someone else is in California. No, it could just mean,
It could be across the room.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
I deal with that all day long sometimes where, because we have multiple offices in my day job. And, I could be communicating with somebody on Slack, and they, one person might be on the other end of the building and the other person might be on the other side of the country.
Sure.
But the point is that we're all collaborating in the same space in real time. Granted, we're not in the same time zone all the time, but we're still in the same space, working on the same project together, regardless
it's all
of
in one. Yeah, and that's huge too. The same space. It's not. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this. You got a message from somebody, you didn't act on it right away. A couple hours go by. Wait, where did I get that message? Was it a Twitter direct message? Was it a text message? Was it a Snapchat? Was it an email? Was it get that stuff in the same space? Yeah,
and whatever that means for you. That's kind of the the thing these days is that there's so many ways to skin a cat that each team can employ a dozen different combinations of different tools.
They could.
And speaking of tools, do you want to go into some remote working tools? Because there's about 1 billion.
Sure. I mean, I think easily 2 that I could put on the proverbial table would be Dropbox and Slack, right?
Yeah. Dropbox is probably the most popular and probably most well operating cloud file system that works between teams. There's 100 of them out there.
There are, yes.
I use half a dozen myself, but Dropbox is probably the most ubiquitous at this point.
Probably at the top. Now, by ubiquitous, sure, amongst people in the know, there's a lot of people out there that just don't know about Dropbox.
I don't believe you.
Oh, it's true.
Well,
you told me that not everybody knows about it.
I know. Well, I'm reading from a Fast Company article now, which we'll put in the show notes.
Sure.
But Trello is the one we've talked about that 100 times. It's a very visual-based project management
Yep.
Software. Flux is interesting. It's a computer display that adapts to the time of day. Ooh. So if you're working in a Starbucks in the wee hours of the morning, and maybe you're there coding a new project, and you're there until the twilight hours of the night, the brightness on your desktop will adjust accordingly to the light in the room.
Oh, neat!
Which is pretty cool. So if you're remote working, the whole point of that is, one day you might be in a coffee shop in New York City, and the next day you might be in a mountain retreat up in Vermont. So
sure,
not having to worry about the brightness of your display is just one less thing, I suppose.
Sure.
But what are some of the tools you use? Because you're probably way more of a remote worker than I am. You are the quintessential remote worker, honestly.
Yeah, so
you technically don't have an office to go to, whereas I have two. So you are a remote worker. So tell me what your tools are.
Yeah, all my work is done remotely. I'd say most everything is either a combination of Dropbox. I hate to say it, but email.
Let me interrupt for a second. This
Sure.
is not to say email is bad.
Right.
I use email every day, all day. I love email.
Right.
I just want less of it.
Right.
So, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. Also, Evernote. I share an Evernote folder or deck or notebook or whatever it's called these days. I share that with my writers for Skull Toaster, and if it's someone's turn to write something, they just go in there and write it, and it magically appears in my Evernote, which is beautiful. Yeah. And Trello. Trello is more for me, though, because that's kind of just where I juggle everything.
So that's really interesting, because Trello is built as a team platform.
Sure, but as a freelancer,
I
I can't go to people that hire me and say, hey, use this.
True.
It'd be nice, but not everyone's going to do that.
So this would all just be solved if you would actually just use Omnifocus like the rest of us.
How would it be? Why? Because my clients aren't going to hop into Omnifocus.
No, and nor can they. Omnifocus is a single user platform.
How about this? When clients email me with things to do, I could forward that email to Trello, and it becomes a to-do card.
Omnifocus has that capability as well, my friend.
I know it does, but Omnifocus has 9 billion other things in it that I can't figure out. I can't wrap my head around. Trello, I could assign a color to it. And that's good enough for me.
Like I said, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat these days.
There are, yes. And for me, I do Trello. Yes, you sat me down and tried to walk me through Omnifocus twice now. I think in 2 different places that you've lived. And it just still, it's maybe the third time's a charm.
Well, anyway, more tools. Trello being one that is a team collaborative tool at its heart. Buffer, yes. Especially if you're working any kind of online community or a content management and social media work, Buffer is going to be one that you might want to check out. Hootsuite is another.
And Tweetdeck.
Can you do multiple users on Tweetdeck?
I have no idea. I don't handle anyone's social media.
Well, Buffer and Hootsuite you can.
Okay. So I'm sure with Tweetdeck you probably can.
So if multiple people, if more than one person is in charge of the socials for whatever project you're working on, those two work the best. Hipchat, which I still love.
Oh, Hipchat! I want to use Hipchat more, but I just haven't found a way to integrate it into everything I do.
Right, and Hipchat's a great way for teams to stay in touch. It's a lot like Slack, and I'll just leave it at that because there's a larger argument there, but it's a lot like Slack.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean,
and we need to mention Google Docs, even though I don't love Google Docs, only because I deal with so many freaking Gmail accounts for different clients, and this like, oh, what am I sharing with this Gmail address and that one?
Yeah, but Google Docs is so rock solid.
It totally is.
I've been using Google Docs for years, and I can count on 3 fingers the amount of times that it didn't work.
Isn't it? You can count on one hand.
No, just 3 fingers, because that's less.
I only need these 3 fingers to.
Just 3 fingers. Another tool that the thing with these productivity tools is there's so many of them out there.
Yes.
And I love a lot of them. My biggest challenge is trying to get other people to use them with me.
Absolutely.
And this next one is one of them. It's called iDonethis.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. And the byline is just staying up to date with the latest from 24 teammates is made a lot easier with iDonethis. You can document achievements from each day, and the next morning a recap of all the team's happenings pops up in your inbox. So a big challenge that a lot of managers have with remote teams is, what the crap are my workers doing all day? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are they working as hard as I need them to work?
Sure.
This is a simple tool that will keep that in check. If you implement this tool into your workflow as a manager with remote workers, or even 1 or 2 remote workers, this will give you a very black and white, picture of what they're doing all day.
Dude, I remember having to do that at one job years ago.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I forget what they were called, if we had a name for it. But yeah, at the end of every day, we had to email, here's what we did each day.
Email it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. I had, back in 2007, 2008, I worked from home, and that was before, I would say, 90% of the remote working tools that are out today. And I always joke with my former boss and friend that, like, man, if we had half the tools that are available today, like, we would have been so much better off than we were, because we were relying. The problem comes when you're relying on your inbox and your phone as your 2 portals of communication, and that's what it was back then. And we didn't have any choice. But now, with all the different tools that we have, it's way easier to stay up to date on the nuts and bolts of each project as they go along.
Totally.
Another challenge for remote working is time zones.
Oh.
And, I know Buffer is a big proponent of telling the world how they work every day, every minute, almost to a fault, in my opinion, but whatever.
They're very transparent.
Insanely transparent. But one of the things they always talk about is time zones, because they have people in San Francisco, Miami, Europe, Asia.
Right.
And, with the rise of globalization, workforces that we have now, let alone what it's going to be 15 years from now.
Oh my goodness. Time
zones are going to play a part. And, I'm a publicist, so I deal with writers and interviews, and over the, a course of many, many different time zones, mainly the 3 that we see on the mainland U.S. here. And I cannot tell you how many times I have to calculate and tell and remind people what time zone that they're in versus what time zone someone else is in. And it's kind of mind-blowing that educated adults cannot wrap their heads around this. But that's dealing with 3 time zones. But what if you work for a company where you have to deal with 9?
That would be bonkers.
It's a little bit more than you're used to. Luckily, there's a tool for that. There's an app for that. One of them is called Every Time Zone. And that's just... it's a very linear display of different time zones versus to what your time zone is. Yeah. Whether it's here, Sydney, Australia, Hong Kong, Beijing, London, Munich, whatever. It's a good tab to keep open on your browser.
Yeah.
And if you ever have that question, like, well, what time is it over there? You can click over and say, it's 6:33 here. That means it's 10:33 in Rio de Janeiro.
Sure.
Another one is Hackpad, which I know we've talked about in early episodes of Workbench.
Yeah, we started this, I think, on Hackpad.
We did. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Hackpad, they were a company back in the day. They got bought up by Dropbox. But it was basically Google Docs, but without the whole... You didn't need a Gmail address to use them, and it was super duper stripped down. It was just super basic. It was like an online notepad, basically. Anything you would paste into it, it would reformat it, like to the default text and stuff. It was beautiful. And it was super easy to share and collaborate with. I haven't used it much lately, but yeah, I just haven't had a use for it. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and especially for writers or copy editors that need to share blocks of text with other people.
Yeah, something short, easy, quick, yeah.
And make annotations and stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
That's, totally. This one's pretty cool. I haven't used this. It's called Workfrom. Let me see. Our team, as I'm reading this, our team is split pretty evenly between coffee shop workers and stay-at-home bodies. For those who work in coffee shops, they often have a favorite or two, and when they're in the mood for a change of pace, this website comes in super handy. Workfrom has recommendations for a number of major cities to help you find your next favorite place to work remotely. You might like that.
Oh, I'm heading to Denver soon, so I'm totally going to use that.
What are you doing in Denver?
What aren't I doing in Denver?
Skiing, probably, but
no,
go ahead.
I'm definitely not skiing. No, a friend of mine, he's got some time off, and he's getting a rental car, and he mentioned it. I'm like, dude, I'll go with you, and I'm going to Denver.
See, you are the physical embodiment of remote working.
Yes. I'm going to need to know my time zones and everything for all my, for my time-sensitive stuff here on the East Coast.
Yeah, well, that's mountain time, just FYI.
Okay.
But check this out. There's another one called... It sounds so stupid saying this.
That's okay.
It's called Squiggle. And I will just read this because Buffer already wrote it as usual. Buffer's visual water cooler. Squiggle is a video chat tool that helps you stay in touch with your team by taking a screenshot of everyone every few minutes, or only when you feel like it.
Oh, we've talked about that in the past, I
think.
Have we? I think so, for our video chat.
Oh,
episode.
right. So that your colleagues can see what you're up to or join you in a quick conversation by clicking on you. We tend to leave Squiggle open. This is Buffer speaking. We tend to leave Squiggle open whenever we're working so we can see everyone's faces, and because it's a great chance to have a little fun together. Slightly creepy.
A little.
But I can see the use for it.
Well, I can tell you, though, seeing other people's faces and stuff, as a remote worker, it's kind of nice. It
is, and that's one of the drawbacks of remote working.
Oh, it's extremely isolating.
Honestly, and that's such a grass is greener scenario, because
yes.
if you're working in an office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, all you can think about is like, man, if I could just work a day or two from home, my life would just be so awesome. But then, by that third or fourth week where that second day rolls around, you're like, man, I really wish I was in an office.
Yeah.
With some people. And I say that because I know people who work from home exclusively, and that's their biggest complaint, is that they want, that collaborative team experience, in a room with other people. And that's kind of the overarching theme of this episode, is that I know you aren't, we're not advocating total remote work.
Right.
And it's a really delicate balance of the two.
Sure.
And I really believe, if you look at any studies performed on this, like remote working or just working from home, at least one day a week, if not more, is on such a rise in the U.S. that, it's headed towards a space where it's going to become a very normal thing.
Yeah.
The same as taking a lunch hour or coming in at 9 or leaving at 5.
Right.
We're coming to a point where working remotely, whether it's from home or a different office or a different city or a hotel or a coffee shop or a beach in Fiji, it's all going to be the same. And it's going to strike a balance between, working remotely when you have to or / want to, versus in an office with other people when you have to or / want to.
Right. And
that's where I think we need to be, is that it's not in a place where it's one or the other,
right,
but in a place where we have the freedom to choose what works for us as workers, to where
yes,
we can perform the best and we can produce the best end result possible, whether it's from in a boardroom with 10 other colleagues, or overlooking a mountain resort in in Denver.
That's me in Denver. Yes, totally going to be doing that.
And that was really that was the rant I was looking for by choosing this topic this week.
Sure. And I got to say too, I mean, the technology, the faster internet speeds, the quicker that we could send files back and forth to one another and communicate with each other. I mean, creatively, I just started playing bass again. And what that might have meant 15 years ago was, okay, got to hit up Craigslist and find some dudes to play with. But now, like, I have, musician friends all over the place and we all have our own recording equipment at home now. Like, now it's just like, hey, why don't I send you a file, do a click track and see what you could put to it and stuff. And like, already, like, my friend Travis, who does the As the Story Grows podcast, what's up, Travis? I'm already working on 2 little projects with him. So, like, that stuff's amazing. And that wasn't really that super duper possible 15 years ago.
Yeah, or even 5 years ago to some degree, let alone 20 years ago.
Yeah, internet speeds and all that stuff, yeah.
And
or just how kind of accepted, like, or wait, can we really do that? Or is the technology there? And like, yeah, it's all kind of come together, so...
Yeah, the point is that the technology is there to not require 2 people in the same room to accomplish something. I mean, Jesus, I can sign official, legally binding documents, in my pajamas from my bed on my iPad if I have to.
Right.
Like, there's no reason for me to have to be in a certain spot physically to do that. I'm waiting until real estate closings happen remotely.
Sure.
Because,
why not?
Once that happens, all bets are off.
I mean, yeah, totally. Like, you can sign up for that Simple Bank. That's a whole bank thing. I mean, you used to have to go to a bank, a physical location, to open up a bank account in order to deposit money there. But no, you don't have to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. But you can do it from your pajamas, in your pajamas.
And I'll also mention this too: is that remote working is not something that should be taken lightly. I really believe that we're in a spot in American work now where it's not something that can just be. It's not like a flip of a switch.
Sure.
Whether you can just come in and okay, that's it. It's really something that needs to be talked about because it is so new, it is so fresh, and it could mean different things to different companies and different employees. Like, what remote working or working from home means to one manager can mean something completely different to another, depending on what you're doing. So the point I'm trying to make is that I really want it to be, and it is, whether I want it to or not, maybe not as fast as I want, but I want it to be a conversation that people are having at work.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is at stake. Where's that thing? I think I put it in the show notes. Okay, this is a New York Times article that I put in the show notes, and this is a quote. Especially speaking from the winter we had in the Northeast, this past winter was pretty brutal.
Oh, yes.
And they mentioned that in this New York Times article, in the quote, "This winter might help push the trend even faster, the trend of remote working. Federal employees in Washington who worked from home during 4 official snow days saved the government an estimated $32 million.
That's a chunk of change.
It is. And I'll go on just in the same article. By one estimate, telecommuting or remote working has risen 79% between 2005 and 2012 and now makes up 2.6% of the American workforce, or 3.2 million workers.
Wow.
According to statistics from the American Community Survey. That sounds official. That includes full-time employees who work from home for someone other than themselves at least half the time. And that'll be in show notes too. So the point that's making is that it's on the rise and it's not going to slow down. I'm telling you, it's going to increase to the point where it's going to be up to the employee That's where we're headed. Do you want to work from home today? Do you want to work remotely? Do you want to travel with your family? That's where we're headed. We're headed to a point where it's not going to become a question of, oh, will my boss let me do that? It will become a point of, oh, of course you can do that because your output's going to be the same no matter where you are.
Yeah, yeah. And really, some of the best workers aren't in the same zip code, aren't in the same city. Hire the best people for the job no matter where they live. Of course, for certain jobs, of course, we get that. But, yeah, I mean, I'm able to provide my services for anyone in almost any time zone. Whether it's updating a website or doing email marketing stuff or social media consulting, I could do that from anywhere. I don't have to be in the same zip code to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of the startup community is really taking advantage of that because, if you're a startup company in Silicon Valley or the Pacific Northwest or even New York, your best candidate for that bug you're trying to work out might be in, Guam,
Ohio.
Yeah, or Cleveland, know, and
Cleveland, Ohio.
That's technically remote working. And,
yeah, oh, totally.
And I can't help but think that there are two schools of thought with this, and I don't think we can get away with a remote working episode without mentioning the Yahoo story last year.
Ooh, I was thinking of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was the wrong move because it was taking an either-or approach, which I think is not the way to do this. And you can't just take an either-or approach. You have to leave it up to the worker,
right?
To really decide what works best for them. Of course, you can have, company policy like, okay, you need to work a certain amount of days here or a certain amount of days there, but give the flexibility to the worker because that's where you're going to get your best work from. Right.
A happy workforce is a productive workforce.
Right. And if you introduce a remote working and you see that it's not working out, and you're seeing points of or where they're taking people are taking advantage, and of course address it. But that's not the point here. The point is to
the problem isn't remote working. Sometimes the problem can be wrong internal processes, sucky employees that are just jerks and take advantage of stuff and ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah, and there's no quick fix for that. Actually, there is. Just fire them.
Well, yeah, there's that. Yeah. So. Yes.
See, you get me all fired up here.
Woo! Now, I remember, doing noise creep, man. I was remote half the time and, work and that's another thing, too. It doesn't always have to be either or. I worked from home most mornings and then, I would saunter into the office, a little bit before noon. That's what worked. And, whatever.
What I need to bring up, too, which is a crucial point of this, too, is distraction.
Yes.
If you're working in an office, and just Google this. This is too big of a topic to just put in the show notes. It's out there.
Yeah.
The distractions are so rampant in the workplace today that remote working removes that. Mm-hmm. To some degree. Of course, you're working from home. You have the hustle and bustle of the house, especially if you have a family.
Sure.
But working from home or remote working totally removes a large portion of distractions that you will undoubtedly get when you're in an office.
Yeah.
And everyone, just Google Lumberg. It's that whole scenario where it's like, yeah, so how was the weekend? What did you do?
Corporate accounts payable.
Yeah, exactly.
One moment.
So.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts before we hit the hay here?
I just really think with any of this remote stuff, it is whatever your endeavor is, whether, thinking about it in the work situation, of course, but I mean, just creative endeavors, and I know so many sites and people and creative people that are doing this already, just the fact of music blogs or outlets being run, of course, by people all over the country, all over the world, and being open to so many of these different processes, to whether they're using Trello or Dropbox or whatever. It's a lot of neat stuff going on, and it's only going to get more diversified. It's only going to expand. as more of this stuff keeps going up online. Whole internet thing's just opened up everything globally, and I think it's just going to keep expanding. So,
I was thinking about today, or I think maybe yesterday, I was talking to my wife about it. Our generation, yours and mine,
sure,
is the generation that will always be remembered for being right in the middle.
Oh my God!
Of ground zero.
Oh yeah.
Of the birth and growth of the internet.
Yeah.
Because my kids, and if you ever have kids
someday,
they will never know a world without the internet.
Right.
I remember a world without the internet, and I know
right.
you do too.
Yes, I do.
And our parents are a different story because it came into their lives much later in life.
Yeah, it was great for them because they could see photos of the grandkids, whatever. Okay, cool.
Right, but it was introduced to us in a very formidable time of adolescence.
Right, and it went from just being this cool thing that we did as kids to like, holy crap, it's my job now. Right,
like Prodigy, CompuServe, age, sex, location.
Yeah, AOL.
Yeah, to recording this podcast. I mean, talk about remote working. I'm in Long Island. That's not. It's why I might as well point that out. A lot of people don't realize that. Like, I'm in Long Island right now. You're in Strasbourg,
Pennsylvania,
right?
Yeah.
And this is remote working technically.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, technically, could I travel to Long Island every weekend to do this? Yep. But holy moly! Even when I was in Long Island and staying with you, Bill,
we didn't record.
No, we didn't do this. It was actually easier. The process that we have was actually easier to do remotely.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah. That's a good note to end on. Well, that's it for this show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you have to know. That's it. There's nothing more to learn. But visit us at workbenchpodcast.com for links to everything we talked about and so much more.
And if you are subscribed on iTunes, which you should be, please super duper give us a review. That'll help us get discovered on other podcast listening apps.
And for questions or comments, you can hit either of us on Twitter. I am at Bill Meese. Seth is at Seth W. Or you can email us at hello@workbenchpodcast.com.
Totally.
Hey, Seth.
Yeah.
Later, dude.